Welcome to another episode of Called Bank Sports. It's been a while since we've done one together. Holidays got in the way. I got sick, so it's
Dale is
nice to
back
be
from health
back.
and safety protocols.
I know.
Had to take a few weeks off for that, but we've got him back, and thankfully the Jazz got Rudy Gobert and Rudy Gay back too. But sorry,
Okay.
I totally
I,
just interrupted
I
you there. Keep going.
I was worried that Rudy Gobert was going to be out for like another 2 weeks. Like it was just going to linger, but he's back. The Jazz, as any Jazz fan knows right now, like it, it feels like we're in free fall. Like the sky's falling. It's the end of the world. It's only been a 4-game losing streak. Those haven't been fun games to lose. We probably should have won at least a couple of those still. But when everyone's out, that's what kind of happens. The Jazz are now in fourth. The Grizzlies have moved up to third. They went on a crazy streak, and so the NBA is kind of exciting right now. It's just not a super exciting time to be a Jazz fan. Hopefully, we can be positive about the future.
No, I totally agree with you. I mean, it sucks. Like, the loss to to Toronto was expected, but the Jazz totally put all their chips in for the Pacers and still ended up losing a game to what's just a not good team in the East. Like, there's some talent there, but you should have won it. You can, if anyone wants to punish themselves, they can go watch my Detroit post game because that loss was just pathetic. I mean, it was just it kind of epitomizes that there are reasons to be frustrated as a Jazz fan right now, and reasons to be really concerned. And I mean, the Cleveland loss totally expected, but Rudy Gobert even came out and said, like, look, we're definitely not the best team in the West. Golden State and Phoenix are so much better than us right now, and we need to turn this around. So at least there's some acknowledgement there. And the Jazz need to be able to take some steps forward and just start playing better. It's and I mean, obviously that's how you win a championship, just play better. Like what more coaching do you need? Just play better. So no, that's a really reductive take, but what do you think the Jazz need to improve? What are you kind of looking at, Dale, when it comes to getting back on the track?
Um, I wasn't like if you watch if for anyone who watched my post game after the Cavs game, I probably mentioned it too many times, but I haven't been following this fall off very closely. I was just kind of out of it. I took a week off of life, um, but then I came back for the Cavs game, watched that. So that's kind of what I'm. Other than the final scores, that's the only game that I really dug deeper into. And what I was seeing is, um, the Jazz, they don't know how to play small ball, both defensively and offensively, which is
Yeah.
something that we've been wanting to see, and it kind of now makes sense why we haven't been seeing it. They it's not just that players were out because they could have won some of these games. They were seeing, even though they were way undersized, like they weren't moving the ball on offense. The offense was get the ball to Donovan or get the ball to Jordan Clarkson, and hopefully they can score. There were a couple moments where they're moving it, but like they weren't. They had no flow on offense. There was no order. They were just like, let's just get to the end of this game and hopefully we get Rudy back. And then on defense, they had some moments, but it really made, like we talked about it in the last playoffs, how the Jazz, the perimeter defense really needs to improve. We the Clippers kind of exposed that, and it was exposed again with that Rudy Gobert there. It makes the defense, you realize that's how big of a difference Rudy Gobert can make. And it brings up an interesting question that I'd love to have this conversation. Most people who aren't Jazz fans looking from the outside in, they say Donovan Mitchell's by far the best player on the Jazz. But I'm curious, do you think Donovan Mitchell's the best player on the Jazz, or do you think Rudy Gobert's the best player on the Jazz? And I know that gets into the conversation of how do you define best? It's
Yeah.
like best versus greatest. What do you want out of that? But I think it's an interesting conversation to have, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
I think, and that's actually where I wanted to get with this. I think it shows that by far Rudy Gobert is the most valuable player on this team. Like that the Jazz need him. That you can't just throw Donovan out there and expect him to be able to, score enough to take to balance out what Gobert is able to do on the defensive end. And obviously, it's a 1-2 punch. Like the Jazz need Rudy Gobert to do multiple things on the offense and defensive end. And because of that, Donovan Mitchell is so successful and is able to go out and put up good numbers and I mean, one of the best shooting guards in the NBA, in the West. Like he is amazing. And by no means am I trying to take away from Donovan Mitchell at all. But again, we saw when the Jazz didn't have Donovan Mitchell and Mike Conley last year, they were still able to win games. And obviously the Jazz are missing more players right now, but when the Jazz don't have Rudy Gobert, they're not able to win games. And that does have to do with, last year it felt like they had a lot more of an identity. They got a win streak going, and they kept winning, and they kept saying, okay, this is what we do. We pass the ball. We get open threes. We run this blender style, and they would revert back to it. When this year it feels like they're reverting back more to ISO ball, which just has led to multiple losses this season. And I think that that's a big negative there. So I feel like a lack of identity has hurt the Jazz. But to just answer your question, I don't want to say best player, even though I do think Gobert is the better player out of the two. Since it's hard to compare, like, Rudy Gobert is an orange and Donovan Mitchell is an apple. I mean, they're both great fruits and you need them to succeed. But I don't want to say who's better, but definitely right now Gobert is more valuable to this team.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like defense will always be underrated in the NBA.
Yeah.
It's much more fun to watch someone score 40 that get 3 blocks and 12 rebounds. But so, but everyone knows how great Rudy is on the defensive end. I think him being out is making people realize he's not the best offensive player. He can't create for himself. It's not like his post moves are amazing, but how he fits it, he's a gear that makes the offense work. His pick and roll game is super valuable. Him being in the dunker spot really opens up a lot of other stuff for the offense. And so, and then with Donovan Mitchell, he is one of the most talented scorers in the NBA, especially at how undersized he is. Imagine if he was 6'7".
Oh my!
People would be he would be a top 3 player in the NBA, I would imagine.
Well,
but
and that's
what he's doing at his height is incredible. But the Jazz have other scorers. We have a lot of people on the roster who can put the ball in the basket. Not as good as Mitchell, but if he's out, there's subs for that. I don't know if there may be a handful of players in the entire NBA that could sub in for what Rudy's doing for the Jazz, and that's what makes it tough when he's out.
Well, and you did talk about offensively, and I think we need to acknowledge this is Rudy Gobert's best offensive season of his career. He's averaging, I think, just under 15 points a game. Like, that's big. The fact that he's now a scoring threat, the fact that he's now most nights shooting a lot better from the line is really big for Utah, just because that opens up the three-point shot a lot more when people are collapsing in on Rudy. And that's what's always happened, and that's why he's so valuable offensively, even if it's not he's valuable offensively because he's putting up 26 a game. The reason that he means so much to the Jazz on that end is because you can't just leave, a 7-footer who can almost touch the rim, when he's flat on his heels with his arms in the air, open in the paint. Like, a dunk is pretty much 100% shot. So he's dangerous even if he's not necessarily elite when it comes to the offensive end of the court.
And I saw this a little bit from Rudy Gobert in years past. I feel like it's more. Maybe this is just me noticing it more.
Yeah.
But when he dunks, he's like going for a poster. He's trying to, he tries to inject energy into the crowd and into his team when he dunks, which that's something that is impossible to measure. But people love it, and every time he gets a dunk like that, it helps. Like when you see your teammate get an awesome dunk, you're going to play with a little bit more energy, a little bit more hustle. So that's something that is impossible to measure. I don't know if it makes next to no impact or a large impact for a few plays. I don't know, but it's, at least for the fans, it's fun to watch. It makes you realize that even though he's not getting 25 points a game, the points that he's getting are really exciting.
Well, I think the player it impacts the most, is Rudy Gobert. Like he's so much more energized on the defensive end whenever he's doing well on the offensive end and is able to get that opportunity down there. And also, you don't necessarily have to worry about the wear and tear that dunking causes when for Rudy Gobert because he jumps 6 inches up in the air and comes down like 2 inches. Where Donovan Mitchell skies in for a dunk and is coming down two whole
He's
feet.
dropping 12 feet.
And I mean, it's just a bonkers difference. But I do think that the Jazz are going to see a big improvement with Gobert coming back. And obviously, the next couple games the Jazz have against the Nuggets, that's going to be a big deal to have Gobert back to be able to guard Jokic. Lakers is always a big game here in Utah, regardless of who they have. And hopefully the Jazz are able to pick up that win. It is not a good Lakers team. I would hate to lose that game. But and then you get a couple lulls against the Rockets and the Pistons. Fingers crossed, a lull against the Piston, please. Please just throwing my mic. I'm so upset. Please just beat the Pistons before an absolute gauntlet with a game against Golden State, 2 games against Phoenix and the Grizzlies. Like we're going to find out who the Jazz are. And I definitely do think like Gobert said, that we found out that they're not quite good enough yet. But hey, there's a reason why it's an 82-game season. If they were the best they're ever going to be right now, that would be more concerning to me. So hopefully they can turn things around and get ready for the playoffs here, in a few months.
Yeah, and you hear players talk about this a lot where they want to be playing their best basketball like 10 games before the playoffs and then just maintain that through the playoffs.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times fans want to see their team start off hot and just be amazing the whole season. But players come in thinking like, okay, here's how we're starting. Let's make here's where we are. Here's where we need to be. Here's the schedule when we need to get there. So
yeah,
I think it's okay to see some drops, especially when your most valuable player is out for a stretch. And it's only been 4 games. I know it hurts because you dropped in the standings, but the Jazz they'll bounce right back. They'll probably get a small winning streak going, and then hopefully they can make it through the gauntlet, not unscathed, but with more wins than losses, and that would be huge for them.
Yeah. Well, I also think that there's a fair argument that, this year you're going to look at the top 8 teams in the West who make it to the playoffs, and every team is just going to be terrifying. Like you have Memphis who's going to make it, Phoenix, Golden State, Utah. Looks like Kawhi Leonard's coming back this year. Didn't expect that, but you're going to have a full-strength Clippers team. You're going to have the Mavs who, I don't think
they were a
anyone
wild
wants
card
to,
at this point.
Yeah. I don't think anyone wants to play Luka in the playoffs, regardless of who you think they have. I mean, Luka's a beast. Never want to count out LeBron, it's going to be crazy. I think I got to 7 teams there, and you're going to look at, in Denver, who's going to get Jamal Murray back. You're probably not going to get Porter Jr. back, but Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, there's a reason Jazz fans don't like that combination. Back to the bubble, but this is going to be an even crazier West than last year, assuming teams are healthy, since the Lakers not being healthy and the Nuggets not being healthy last season, and then the Jazz and Clippers both losing players definitely hurt the playoffs. And if teams are healthy, this is going to be the deepest the West has ever been.
And it will be fun to watch because the Warriors had a dynasty for a while. They're playing really good, but they're not playing as good as their unbeatable teams.
Yeah.
And so they'll be a tough matchup for any team in the playoffs, and they should play some great basketball, and those will be fun games to watch. But it's another wide open year. Any team can make it. No, I don't think people who follow the game, I don't think they'll be shocked if the Grizzlies make it to the NBA Finals and make it through the West. Same thing with the Jazz. And obviously the Suns and Warriors are right there. Denver gets healthy. They get on a streak. They've been a great team so it's and obviously you said you can't count out LeBron James. I feel like I'm just naming off teams just like you were doing, but it's wide open. And that's what we want to see out of the NBA. I'm hoping, because for a long time it was, okay, LeBron's coming out of the East, and okay, Steph's coming out of the West. And then
Yeah.
you had some slight variations in that, but for a long time that's what it was, and it was kind of boring. It was just like the NBA was fun because you got to watch Steph break records and LeBron
Well,
James be LeBron James.
and
Now we're going to see teams, young up and coming teams like the Grizzlies or the Jazz. I don't know if they're up and coming. The Jazz are up and coming, but the Grizzlies are, make a splash in the playoffs and kind of show who they are.
and you talk about those, Cleveland Golden State matchups during the same time as the Alabama Clemson matchups in college football playoffs. So literally no parity at all during those few years, but got a lot of parity now, and I'm excited to see where it goes. I do have one last question before we wrap up. We didn't do a lot of prep for this, so it's just going to be pretty basic. If you had to guess, Dale, that the Jazz are going to trade a rotation player before the deadline, would you go yes or no on that? What are your thoughts and what's your prediction? And does this losing streak, influence that at all?
No, I don't think that losing streak will influence it at all.
Okay.
I think the whole organization will see it as, well, Rudy was out. Obviously, it's going to be rough.
Yeah.
And it's not like they had a ton of prep for Rudy being out. I do think there's a chance that they trade a rotation player. I think it's under 10% though. So
under
I would say they
10%, pretty low.
probably don't. Like, I don't know. I feel like teams around the league don't value the Jazz rotation players as much as the value that they're bringing to the Jazz. So I don't think the Jazz are against it, but I think they're looking around and saying, we're not going to get a net positive trade with anyone. So let's keep everyone where they are. And I would agree with that unless there's a superstar who just falls off, says he wants to come to the Jazz, and the Jazz can get him for dirt cheap. Then I don't, unless something like crazy like that happens, I don't think they're going to be trading anyone.
Well, and with where the Jazz are in the tax, like I don't even think there's a way to pull off getting someone for dirt cheap, because if they're, unless it's a really young superstar on their rookie deal, like you have to match contracts, right? The one thing I heard, and I don't even know the roster well enough to know if there's someone I'd want off this team, but with Dame being out for a bit, I've heard speculation that the Blazers are just going to sell, just keep Dame out for the season, just sell and try to just get a completely different team around him. I'm not sure if there's someone I'd want off the Blazers, but
I would like
speculation.
Robert Covington. I don't know what his salary is though, so I don't know how realistic that is. I think he'd be an awesome fit with the Jazz.
Yeah. And the thing is with Robert Covington, if I remember, is he's someone that people claim to be a 3-and-D guy, but then if you look at his 3-point shooting, he's a D guy. And I could be wrong. I could be mixing him up with someone.
He's not Steph and he's not Clay.
Yeah.
He'll have good games and he'll have bad games.
It's almost more like Royce O'Neal vibes. Maybe not that bad, but like he's going to need to be streaking. And it'll be interesting to see. I am leaning towards there not being a trade, but I do know the Jazz are looking for a wing defender. And I do think they need a wing defender, since I don't think small ball is the solution to the Jazz's problems, because Rudy Gobert can guard on the perimeter. The problem is the fact that nobody else can guard on the perimeter. And if Gobert's out on the perimeter, then you don't have a secondary rim defender. Like, you have to stop your guy and stay between him. And the Jazz weren't able to do that against the Clippers. And because of that, Gobert got pulled in, ball got kicked out, and the ball kept going in that game. So it'll be interesting. I'm excited for the next little bit, excited for the All-Star break coming up, to see where the Jazz are going into that. And for everyone.
Jazz players.
Vote for Jazz players. I need to do a better job of that. I'm just so... I hate this All-Star fan vote, and I get that the All-Star break is for the fans. But it is what it is. So thank you everyone for watching. We really appreciate it. Hope you guys have a great weekend, and go Jazz.